Welcome to Management 228 Human Resource Management. This course is going to be interesting, I hope, from the very beginning all the way to the very end, and I hope that you remain fully engaged into it. The topic itself is becoming really big in the world of business. So we'll be talking about it as you go through, but once upon a time, human resources was called personnel management. And it really was an administrative job, and now it's evolved into something much bigger, but we're going to dive into that later on as we start going through the chapters and describing some of the different challenges that, if this is your field of choice, you're going to be facing. To be honest about it, it is a popping business as you go through, a lot of engagement, and really your job, depending where you're at and what position you're in, can sit down and have a different type of duty every single day, and you'll be fully occupied all the time. Anyway, my background, I actually was a community college student once upon a time, a lot like you. I rolled into a class and everything else. And when I went to registration, I was put into the wrong class. It was a pre-college English class. And I looked around and I was the smartest student in the class. And it wasn't very hard to do. That being said, the instructor sat there in the second week, he pulls me aside, he says, "Why are you in this class?" I said, "I don't know." He pulled me out of it and he put me into an independent study class, and he taught me how to speed read with high comprehension. My rate at that time, and it remains to this day, about 990 words a minute with a 92 to 95% comprehension rate. That was because of one teacher at a community college took time out to pay attention to a student who was totally befuddled by the system as you go through. That was Dr. Rob Avery. He was awesome, and of all the different degrees I've earned, he was probably one of the finest people because he took that little bit of interest and sat down there and turned me from mediocrity into something actually a much better student because of him. The other one was another community college student named Tom Cook. Tom Cook, I wanted to become a composer once upon a time. Yes, it's true. And so he sat down and he drove his students mercilessly. He gave us challenges. And you know what? We all rose up and we met them. He's probably one of the people that I would attribute to getting me to sit down and become from a mediocre student with a relatively grade point average into something extraordinarily academically, because he taught me that I could drive myself much harder. Later on, in my first year, Dr. Avery took me over to counseling, and they gave me a thing called Strong's Interest Inventory. And Strong's Interest Inventory is really an extraordinary test. I recommend you take that before the end of this semester. Seriously, it really helped me in my career pathway. I wanted to be a composer. I wanted to be a kinesiology instructor. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to do this. I wanted to do that. I didn't want to do anything that this test told me I should. I took the test, and it measures your interest and puts them in comparison to the job market. And instead of giving you some raw, vague stuff that means nothing, it says, here's job titles you may be interested in. And it cranks out different categories, and it gives you 4 different categories as you go through, and 10 jobs in each category. Of all things, it said I should become an accountant. Oh my gosh, I thought that is so boring to be an accountant counting numbers, or an attorney. Well, you all know what those attorneys do in the courtroom. Actually, there's a whole series of things that attorneys do, and it's not just courtroom work. That's only part of the job. Or a thing called a chief human resource officer. I was offended beyond belief, and by the time it was all done, it ended up being pretty accurate. Here's kind of my job. I was a human resource officer for 17 years, not just any, but a chief. That was the first job I had in human resources. I was a chief business officer with a really strong financial background. I had budgets from $26 million all the way up to $811 million, and I handled the legal affairs for 2 different college districts. I don't know how you can't become more spot on than Strong's Interest Inventory to help me define what my pathway was. And I've had a really interesting career as I've gone through. And you know what? Let me give you some credit over here. You are a community college student, and I think it's a good launching point. Yes, I have roots tied to it because I was one too, but let me sit down and talk about the money, because money is a big deal today, and it's going to be a lot of deal tomorrow as you go through. That being said, you have made a smart choice. A couple things. Number one, by you being at a community college, you're going to have a smaller class size than when you go on to become a university student as well. On top of that, the tuition is a fraction of what you're going to pay at a university. And you also have different faculty are going to engage with you and try to help you out on an individual basis. Let me tell you about one of my sons named Kurt. Kurt sat down there. We had all our money saved to ship him off to 4 years to spend time there. And he sat there to kind of deal with us. He says, if I go to local schools, can I take what money you have left over and apply it to my master's degree? He was already negotiating, kind of like human resource people. And so we said, sure. So he went, of all things, to Saddleback College and Irvine Valley College, a little bit like you. He was out in 2 years. By the way, if you're a full-time student, you focus in on your classes. You get out of IBC in 2 years if you can do it. You do all your best you can do that. And then he went local again to Concordia College. And by the time he was done, he ended up graduating with a bachelor's degree in business administration with a focus on accounting. And then he went over to Chapman University and he finished his MBA there. Somewhere in there, he picked up a part-time job on top of that. But here is the best part of the story, and you need to hear this. He graduated debt-free. That's a big deal. It's a big deal, and pay attention to that, because you don't want to have a big giant debt hanging over your head as you begin your career pathway or your entrepreneur pathway, depending what you choose to do. He ended up meeting a gal and they got married. And she also had a master's degree from UCI, except she had a debt of $91,000. And now they've been married for several years and they've only paid that debt down to $77,000 as you go through. That debt hangs heavy over them, and it's going to be with them because even if you declare bankruptcy, it still carries over as you go through. They will have to repay that as you go through. You, by going to community college, have already made a smart decision as you go through. Here's my background academically. I have an Associate of Arts in Liberal Arts from Macomb Community College. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from Wayne State University. I have an MBA from Oak University and a PhD or a doctorate in organizational behavior from a place called the Union Institute and University. When I graduated with my bachelor's degree, I went out and I went from sitting full-time as a student, studying nonstop, into one of the toughest jobs you could possibly imagine. I was a retail store manager at a place called Minnesota Fabrics. I went from sitting to working 55 to 65 hours every week, making decisions, making 10 to 12 decisions every single hour. Each decision in retail, somebody could sit down and say, I don't like what he did, and everything else, and get you in trouble with the higher ups. You can lose your job sometimes if a customer complains loud enough, or have to sit down there and do some type of penance as you go through. It's a tough job, but you know what? Because it's a tough job, there's a lot of turnover rate in it, and you can advance very rapidly in the world of retail. And by the way, some of the stores pay extraordinarily well. You would be surprised how well they pay as you go through. I think retail is a great place to learn experience and a great place to build your resume as you go through. I have a knack for organizing things. So the church you attend to, they wanted to start a school. So I became a principal of a K-12 school. I have to tell you, I love the work. I enjoyed working with students, especially at that age, except the pay was horrible and the retirement plan didn't exist as you go through. The school was doing fine financially. The church got in trouble. They sold the building and had to go find what I consider a real job. I ended up going to a place called Kramer Homes Housing Cooperative. It's a giant housing community with 87 giant buildings as you go through. And I was a general manager reporting to a board of directors as you went through. And I had to learn how to work with the city because we actually owned 17% of all the housing of the city of Centerline, Michigan, as you go through. It's a giant complex. I learned all about structures, how to deal with contractors, how to write contracts, how to deal with legal bodies, how to deal with the board, all that it was a great learning experience. And from there, I ended up getting a job at a K-12 system as the director of facilities and transportation at Fitzgerald Public Schools. And I spent 4 years there honing my skills in the administrative area. And then I went on to become the financial officer for the largest college in the 5-college system called Oakland Community College, called the Director of Campus Services. That was my first taste of working at a college, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. From there, one of the chief people in the district office says, hey, I got this guy here, let me drag him out. So I was pulled out and we reorganized the college, and I was a chief consultant for that. I was an internal consultant, and we reorganized my old job and we got rid of it. It was terrible. I had no place to go, except I created another job, and it paid more money. And guess what? I got it. Yes, yes. Isn't that incredible how that worked? Anyway, so I worked there, and then we went for a vacation over here in California, and my wife said, you know what, go find a college and get a job. I went and I picked up a college catalog at College of the Desert in Palm Desert, California. I watched the website for 2 years and applied for a job I wasn't qualified for. They had an interview committee with 23 people on the interview committee, and somehow, even though I never worked a day in human resources, they hired me by unanimous vote of all 23 to become their first vice president of human resources. I had a knack for negotiating and dealing with contracts on a regular basis. So from there, I spent several years at College of the Desert, and then I came over here to Orange County, and I was a vice chancellor for 9 years here in Orange County for human resources. And the South Orange consists of Saddleback College and Irvine Valley College. And from there, I asked the board to become a professor of business at IVC. That is my story. I'm going to be listening for your story in our very first discussion post that's coming out in our first week of class. But just for fun, I'm an author of 4 different books, actually 5 right now. One's coming out soon as you go through. Probably the most dominant one out there is called Backboneology, Tough Decisions at Work. It's available on Amazon, several other book websites you should go through. A couple poem books, one's called Naked Turtle Dances, another one, Zombie Dearest, Poems Sharing Zombies, and another one, Vietnamese American Pride. You may notice I'm not Vietnamese, but I really have worked with a lot of the aspect of trying to deal with second generation Vietnamese children. I didn't want them to lose their identity as an American or as a Vietnamese, their history. It's a children's book as you go through. I also have written a couple plays. One of them is Zombie Dearest. It was my first musical comedy that premiered here at Irvine Valley College in 2018. And I've written several screenplays and stage plays as well. If you want to get a hold of me, it is always the best way to get a hold of me is on email as you go through. I have office time as you go through, but a lot of times I deal with a lot of work, deal with students one-on-one on email as you go through. So feel free to contact me. Generally, I get back to you 24 hours, except 1 day a week. Usually that 1 day a week is on Saturday or Sunday as you go through. So with that's enough for my introduction. I'm going to leave you right now. We're going to dive into another segment called Course Details. With that, take care.